Let's talk about how women are conditioned to accept abuse.
We are a society that raised women to be abused. Let me give an example. I don't know if you as ladies had this experience when you were a child, but whenever a boy in your class used to tease you or hit you, whenever you tell the teacher or tell an elder that's close to you, the first thing they'll say is, maybe he likes you. What about a boy assaulting me and hitting me alludes that he likes me? Why were we told that when we were kids? And then we get shocked when we grow up and we realize that multiple of our peers are in abusive relationships, but we are legit conditioned to accept abusive relationships.
If you're familiar with the term negging, that's exactly what it is. It's when a man gives you a backhanded compliment or he insults you, and to him it's flirting, but to you it's obviously an insult.
The argument for women to just pick better men, to just not ignore the red flags that they see and continue to move on in a relationship or have children with, and that continued conversation, we're missing out very key points here. And one of them is they're forgetting that women have grown up being told that when a boy or a man puts his hands on her or he is mean to her, it means he likes her. You are forgetting that that has been socialized and conditioned in young girls since a very young age. The boy who is mean to you likes you. And the other thing is that you are expecting women to anticipate abuse, to anticipate a poor outcome, to anticipate being assaulted. And yet nobody ever mentions to men that they should be anticipatory of their own abusive behavior. It's always on the women to be anticipatory of their own abuse. Because maybe if they just anticipated a little bit better, maybe if they just controlled things a little bit more, they could have escaped their own abuse. But nobody ever says to men, look at the pattern of abusive behavior in your own family, in the own circles that you run in, from your great-grandpa, to your father, to your uncle. Nobody ever tells men to be on the lookout and be anticipatory of their own abusive behaviors so as to avoid them being done to women in their life. It's not women's jobs to be anticipatory of men's abusive behaviors, of men's abusive situations that women are placed in. That's like expecting women to have a magic crystal ball and to be able to see that the man that they're in a relationship with right now, who seems to be great, who's doing all the right things, he's saying all the right things, could one day end up abusing her in some way, shape, or form. Because men don't just abuse women on the first date. They're not forthcoming with, hey, you know what? In about 5 months from now, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. Or hey, in about 2 to 3 weeks after we start getting into this relationship, I'm going to start mentally abusing you. I'm gonna start isolating you from your friends and family. Men don't say that. They're not forthcoming with that information about the intended potential abuse that they plan to do on women. Stop telling women to be anticipatory of men's abusive behaviors and start telling men to be anticipatory of the abuse that they can give to women.
This is why I think it's so important for us to know how to identify certain signs of abuse, different types of abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, because the more you know, the better you are able to protect yourself and to protect someone else. So maybe you're learning all of this and it's not for you. You're not in the situation and you are luckily never going to be in this situation. But you have a sister, you have a mom, you have an aunt, you have a best friend, you have a female cousin who could really use this type of advice and these types of videos.
Ladies, here are signs that you might be with someone who might physically abuse you in a relationship. If a man is overly aggressive, if he is controlling, if he is very jealous, if he grabs you by your wrist, if he will not let you leave, if you ever want to leave a room, a house, leave any type of situation, if he physically does not let you leave, these might be the signs that later on you might really get your butt kicked. So do not let the red flags just be oblivious to you. If a man will grab you and physically hurt you, even if it's not a slap or a punch, in the future, it could get worse. Men should not put their hands on you, period. Men should not restrain you, period. These are signs that in the future, you might have a lot of trouble coming.
I like that she pointed out that it's not like the grand obvious signs of physical abuse. So like pinching or like maybe twisting your ear or squeezing your hands or anything that like he pokes at you, anything like that. That is subtle signs of abuse. Sometimes I see these pranks on TikToks where people are like hitting each other or slapping each other as like a prank, and there's something about them that don't really sit well with me, because your man should not be comfortable doing certain abusive things to you as a joke.
You have a problem in your relationship, but you can't bring it up. Why? It's a little bit of fear, a little bit of confusion, a little bit of self-doubt. An abuser is going to groom you by using punishment. If you criticize them in any way, no matter how positively you frame it, watch, you'll get, how could you accuse me of that? Why are you always trying to make me look bad? You are so ungrateful. I can't even talk to you when you're like this. You know what? I'm done. Well, I guess I'm just the worst person ever then, huh? Nothing I ever do is good enough for you. Why are you always attacking me? It's like you can't see how much I'm hurting. Or just the silent treatment. But listen, the point is, there's a punishment, there's a negative consequence every time you bring something up. The environment that you're living in is that you're wrong. You're wrong to bring it up now, you're wrong to bring it up later. How could you say that to him? But that's the whole point, right? You're supposed to feel guilty. You're supposed to shut down your emotions. You're supposed to not ask for anything. You have been groomed to prioritize their needs, their wants over your own every single time. Now, I really get into detail on how to overcome that, how to stop, how to change that behavior in my upcoming group coaching program called Trauma Bond Recovery. But listen, here's the 3 things that you really need in order to overcome this. You need to build the awareness of what they're doing and why they're doing it. You need to establish boundaries, which I know is incredibly difficult, especially the part about the consequences. And you need to develop emotional resilience. One of the key things is just to stop justifying yourself. Stop defending yourself. He's trying to escalate the argument, and you have to understand that's the goal, to make you defend yourself and argue, because that gives them the emotional response that they're looking for. When you respond emotionally, they feel like they have the control, and they do. He can make you feel angry, happy, sad, frustrated, filled with rage. Don't over-explain. Make your point if you need to, and that's it. Call it a day. You're not going to change their behavior. And I know nobody wants to hear this, but you know what needs to change? You. You need to change that you're in this relationship. When you're still in the relationship, it is so hard to walk away from these conversations because you so desperately want to seek resolution. But have you noticed that there's never a solution? There's never a good time to bring it up. He always feels attacked. He always gets angry. He always dismisses it. So prioritize yourself. Prioritize your own emotional regulation. Prioritize learning how to leave the relationship. So let me teach you this in my upcoming group coaching program that I'm co-hosting with Dr. Carrie McAvoy. Over 12 weeks, we are going to teach you all the skills, all the tools that you need to break your trauma bond, to leave the relationship, and to just finally feel free.
I really like her. She creates a lot of helpful videos, and if you're on TikTok, her page will be linked in the description below. You can go ahead and go over there and see some of her other content.
If anyone of you thinks that abuse is just physical, let me give you an example of how abuse persists in South Asian culture. I was just speaking to my friend and she told me that she called off her wedding. And when I asked her why she did that, she told me a lot of situations that went wrong. But one of them that really stood out for me was that when she actually was trying to talk to her ex-partner and she was trying to tell him that he's being oppressive and he is literally expecting her to change everything, he asked her, as a matter of fact, not even asked, he actually told her that, hey, if you want to adjust in my family, you need to forget everything that you've known for the past 26 years. You need to forget all of that. And you have to start afresh. What? And when she talked to his friend's wife, and she was having a woman-to-woman conversation, the friend's wife said that, well, this is nothing. This is the bare minimum that he's expecting. And my friend was just like, am I crazy? Like, do you think I could have done anything better? Do you think that I could have, better adjusted in that environment? And I was like, dude, you're a lawyer. Like, you're an attorney, this is not okay. Like, this is abuse. So it really does not matter what your education levels are. Abuse has different forms. So make sure you're there for people who are going through it and you give them the right peace of your mind.
Well, number one, I'm happy that she was able to reach out to her friend and she was able to recognize and come to the conclusion that the wedding needs to be called off and that this is abusive. Expecting me to forget everything that I've known about life, everything that I want for myself, all my thoughts, all my desires, just because I'm married to you or I'm going to marry you, is setting me up to be controlled and abused for the rest of the marriage. Instead of trying to have someone who you have to control to fit into your box, how about finding somebody who already fits the life that you have and the future that you want for yourself? When people get married, they do not change. They're not going to suddenly become the person that you're thinking in your mind. And ladies, listen, when you marry that man, he's not going to change. He's going to be the exact same person that he is now or worse. Do not go into any marriage with a rose-colored glasses and think that after you get married and after you talk to him enough and after you show him how wonderful you are and how much he's hurting you and all the things that he's doing, that he's gonna change overnight, or one day he's gonna wake up and realize that, you know what, she was right. I'm gonna do all of these things. I'm gonna change all of these things. Very, like, this much chance of that happening. And you have to really ask yourself, why do you want to get married so bad? And why does it have to be him?
There are many women who were raised in oppressive and abusive households where their behavior was controlled. Hi, I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I've worked with women who have been victims of narcissistic abuse. And I'm constantly reminded in the work that I do and the women that I work with, and a lot of them are women of color. But not all. We're raised in very oppressive and controlling and rigid households where a lot of the rhetoric was around being a good girl, studying, and being a high achieving academic performer, and making sure you keep your head in the books and stay in school and do all of that, and go to a good college and everything like that, which there's nothing wrong with being a high achieving young adult. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem comes when there's no real socialization that's allowed to happen. So what I mean by that is these girls aren't allowed to have friends, they're not allowed to date, they're not allowed to explore other curiosities or have their own individualistic personality, and they're expected to just conform and comply, and whenever they do have that curiosity to go out and explore and try to date or be around their friends, a lot of times they'll be labeled as promiscuous, they'll be labeled as grown, and they'll be berated, they'll be cussed out. Some of them may even be physically abused as a result of that, and a lot of that happens around the time frame that these girls become curious in boys, these girls become curious in exploring sex, they become curious in exploring dating, they start to develop physically and also mentally, where they start to individualize and have their own personality. There's oftentimes pressure from mom and dad to conform or stay in your place or be a good girl, or weaponized for wanting to explore their own natural curiosity. So there's
the biggest example of this is African households, Caribbean households, and like Asian households. Like stereotypically, those three groups, I would say parents really, it's just about achieving. And if you ever express that, oh, you're interested in dating or exploring yourself, exploring sexuality or whatever, then you're demonized. And I understand why parents do that. A lot of parents are really focused on ensuring that the child does not get sidetracked by, you know, those things, because education at that point, I would say, is more important. But it's in a way where you don't even talk about it. You can't even talk about it. And it leads to sneaky girls and maybe boys. I'm not sure how boys deal with that, because typically it's okay if a boy does it. It's okay if a boy shows interest in girls. But if a girl shows interest in a boy, she is in trouble.
There's like this sort of degrading, name calling, and abusive rhetoric around that, or told that they're, you know, a bad kid for wanting to do that. And that is so crippling to just you as a human being. That can be very, very crippling. And a lot of times what tends to happen is when these girls are raised in these oppressive households, they'll go out and they'll marry someone that is very similar, has very similar rhetoric. So they'll have an abusive and controlling partner that's very similar to what they grew up with. It doesn't allow them to be an individual with their own thoughts, wants, needs, and desires. And then, you know, if they don't have a partner, you know, if even if they do have a partner, or if they don't have a partner, they will still, a lot of times we have our own internal dialogue, our own internal critic, and we take on the voices of our parents that sort of ostracized us or berated us, and tried to put us into a box for having natural desires, wants, and needs. So we start to think that about ourselves. If we do this, then we're that. If we do this, someone's going to make a judgment about us about that. You know, so we can kind of get caught up in our own thoughts and start to even demonize ourselves, you know, try to make ourselves small or keep ourselves in a box by having all these rigid rules and expectations with ourselves. So I want to, you know, just remind you to be mindful of that. And one of the things that one of the things that I work with my clients is, you know, just being more open about, you know, life, and especially with dating and sexual curiosity, like just how you need to lower your guard and also just be a lot less rigid with yourselves. Take yourself out of that box, be open, be more curious, have greater experiences, allow yourself to have those experiences without all of that judgment and that harsh criticism, or to stop creating negative narratives around everything. Hope that helps.
So have you ever heard of Pavlov's classical conditioning theory? You know, the one with the dogs and the bell? Well, this theory is exactly what's happening. So here's a rundown of the theory. Okay, Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning, it revolves around the process of learning through association. So in his famous experiments, he actually conditioned dogs to associate the sound of a bell with the presentation of food. And as a result, the dogs began to salivate upon hearing the bell alone, even without the presence of food. So this demonstrated how a natural stimulus, the bell, could become a conditioned stimulus that elicits a conditioned response, salivation.
Share your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video.